Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of November 5th, 2020. My name is Gary Hirsch and I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is a citizen body appointed by City Council. The Commission is empowered to make final decisions on certain matters, with those being appealable to City Council. On other matters, the Commission acts in an advisory role to Council, with the Council making the final decision. You will have an opportunity to address the Commission during the public hearing portion of the meeting, and your testimony is very much appreciated and encouraged. The Commission acts from a written agenda. You will need to fill out a yellow speaker card and give it to City staff if you wish to speak on an item. Copies of the agenda and speaker cards are located on the table just inside the main entry to the Glendale Civic Center here. At this time, I'll ask that you be sure to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. Thank you. There are 7 members appointed to the Planning Commission. At this time, I'll ask the commissioners to introduce themselves, state the district they are representing, starting on my far right.
Good evening. I'm Ed Nyberg, representing the Cholla District.
Good evening. I'm Vern Crow, representing Cactus.
Warren Wilfong, Ocotillo District.
Martin Nowakowski, representing Yucca District.
And I am Gary Hirsch, a resident of the Cactus District, a mayoral appointee representing the city at large. Let the record reflect that all members of the Planning Commission are present, with the exception of Vice Chair Lennox and Commissioner Harper, who are excused this evening. The Planning Commission receives staff assistance and guidance from the Planning Division and the City Attorney's Office. Director Collins, would you please introduce city staff that are present here this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this evening we have Sherry Crapser, our Development Services Management Assistant, that is helping with running the meeting today. Also, James Gruber, our Senior Deputy City Attorney. I will also say we have some people that are here virtually. That is Edward Vigil, planner on our staff, who will be making a presentation. Diana Figueroa is also virtually with us, and she is a management assistant. I'm Lisa Collins, and I am the planning administrator and interim development services director, also appearing virtually this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on an item this evening that is not on tonight's agenda, because these items are not on tonight's agenda, the Commission cannot take action this evening. However, the items could be considered and added to a future agenda. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. And this evening, I see we have no minutes. Ms. Collins, do we have any withdrawals or continuances?
No, Mr. Chairman, we do not.
As there are none, we'll move on to the public hearing items. The purpose of a public hearing is to provide interested parties an opportunity to present testimony for the Commission's consideration. We will follow the same procedures for each item. The chair will call the application number and the name of the applicant. Staff will present their report and answer questions from the Commission. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation and answer questions from the Commission. Other persons who wish to testify will be asked to do so and answer questions from the Commission. The applicant will have an opportunity for closing comments. Staff will be asked for any final comments on the application and procedural guidance. The chair will then close the public hearing and ask for a motion prior to discussion. If you wish to speak on an item this evening, you will need to fill out a yellow speaker card. Again, they're located on the table just inside the main entrance to the Glendale Civic Center. You'll need to state your name and address for the record if you wish to speak on an item. Please be brief and to the point. Avoid repetition. The chair does reserve the right to limit the length of your testimony All exhibits shown to the commission shall become part of the permanent record and must be submitted for the file. Disruptions, boisterous behavior, rudeness will not be tolerated. We have 3 public hearing items this evening. The first is Trevino Preliminary Plat PP 20-004. And Ms. Collins, are you making the presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am. And the way that we're going to do this, I will say next after each slide so that our staff from IT that are helping Roger and David, they will help to move the presentation along. So with that, I'd like the first slide. Okay, so this is Trevino at Glen Lakes, PP 20-04. Next. And the vicinity map shows this in a relation to City Hall. It is to the north and a little bit east at 55th Avenue and Northern Avenue. Next. So this request is for a preliminary plat approval for a 173 lot single family residential subdivision on approximately 42.8 acres. Next. As you know, there's been significant public involvement and notification for this particular application. The property was posted August 19th, 2020, advertised August 18th, and hearing notification cards were mailed out on August 14th, all of 2020. You might recall this was on your September 3rd Planning Commission agenda, and it was continued to the hearing this evening, November 5th. Next. So just for a little bit of a history on the public involvement, we did have an open house in December on the 17th of last year, 2019. We had an additional open house on January 7th, 2020, 3 planning commission hearings and a city council hearing, all on the zoning application and the general plan amendment, which represented the preliminary plat that you'll be seeing this evening. The site plan has remained unchanged. Next. So again, here's the location in green. It's shown as it was A1 agricultural and rezoned to R16 PRD, which is planned residential development. Next. So here is an aerial showing the location of the property. Next. And this is the site plan that you've seen at each of your hearings. This site plan does show the location of the lots and the lot sizes. And again, those were approved as part of the planned residential development because again, those are amended development standards. They're not the straight R16 single family. And the green area along the east and the west is the park area that will be dedicated to the city. And there's a trail that extends along the north side of the site. Next. So again, these are the development standards that were approved as part of the zoning case. Again, there's a maximum height of 30 feet, which is consistent with the R16. There was no change there. The side and rear yard, side yards are 5 feet minimum, rear yard 15. The minimum lot sizes for this development as approved were 5,175 square feet. The minimum lot width is 45 feet and the maximum lot coverage will be 60%. And again, this was all approved at the city council hearing. Next. So here's the depiction of the actual preliminary plat document. As you know, this is a really a preliminary engineering document. Once this is developed into a final plat, it will really mirror this. There'll just be more details on the engineering and infrastructure. So next. So this is closer up showing the northern section. And next, the south slide will be the southern section. Next. This slide shows the public park area that again will be developed by the developer and then dedicated to the city for use by the surrounding neighborhood. Again, this is a neighborhood park, and so it's anticipated that we certainly don't want people driving there. We want people in the neighborhood and in this community to enjoy the park. And so that's the purpose for the amenity type and those kind of things. But the park itself is would be approved by the Parks Department, the actual amenities, because they'll be maintaining the park. Next. So the next several slides I'm going to show you are the landscaping slides that are part of the preliminary plat. This is the preliminary landscape plan. So there's several slides here and it is fairly detailed. So we'll just go through those. Next. So this is the landscape plan, and this actually shows the plant materials, types, sizes, and quantities. Next. So this is section 1 in this slide depicting the area that is on the southern side of the site. I'm sorry, the southwestern side. And then going up, this is section 2. So we're just going to kind of go around to the north and then back over to the east. Next. Oop. Next. I'm just going to kind of flip through these, and then if you have some questions, we can certainly answer them. And the applicant is also available to answer these questions for you. So next. I believe there's going to be 9 sections, so it shows some pretty significant detail, showing the walking path and the landscaping and the turf areas. Next. Section 5. So again, this is on the northern portion of the site where the sidewalk, the walking path connects both the west and the east side. Next. So we're coming around the corner here, going on to the east side of the site. Next. And going to the south, still on the east side. Next. So section 8. And then next is section 9, and that completes the landscape plan. Next. So the next slide depicts the wall in the amenity plan. And so you can see the dark lines around those are the rear yard walls, of the neighborhood. And then on the west side of the site at 55th Avenue, if you see the triangle, that is the location of the community identification sign. Next. And there is a rendering of that. So that is the monument sign and the walls. And as you see, some of the walls are partial view fence, and some of them are solid. The solid are the theme walls. Next. So again, here's some street views. I know you've seen these before, but we'll go ahead and look at them again. So the next slides are going to start on the southwest corner, then we'll go to the northwest corner, the northeast corner, and the southeast corner. So again, these are the southwest corner looking in all directions. Next, oh, I'm sorry, next. Yes, so these are those slides on the southwest corner of the site looking in each direction. Next. The northwest corner of the site looking in all directions. Next. The northeast corner of the site looking in all directions. Next. And then the southeast corner looking in all directions. Next. So the next slides that I'm going to show you are, again, the housing product. So this one is named the Agave. Next. This is the Baja. And just to remind you, these are approved at a design review level. They are an administrative approval, and we ensure that they're meeting all of the setback requirements and all of the items that were called out in their planned area development, planned residential development, pardon me. And these housing products were part of that. So what we're seeing here will be very consistent with what's constructed. Next. So this is the Oleander housing product. Next. The Stella. Next. The Viola. Next. And so the staff is recommending that all of the requirements have been satisfied. Therefore, the Planning Commission should approve the preliminary plat subject to the stipulation. And that is that the development would be in substantial conformance with both the development plan and preliminary plat narrative for Turbino, dated December 18, 2019, and updated in June 15, 2020. Next. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I believe the applicant is not virtual. I believe they're in the audience. I could be wrong about that. And they can also provide a presentation and answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Commissioners, do we have questions on the application for Ms. Collins? Commissioner Wilfong.
Ms. Collins, on the development standards, you have like the front yard minimum. You have like on the 45-foot wide lot, an 18-foot garage, a 10-foot livable area. What is a side entry garage?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can go back, I do not believe that their plans are calling for a side entry garage, so I don't think that's part of their proposal. In going through these, I'm not seeing that. And let me get back to that slide too, where it talks about that. Oh, thank you. I am looking at this, and it doesn't appear that they have that in their models at this point. But so a side entry garage, that would be, and if the applicant's here and they can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the whole point of having an 18-foot setback for a garage is so that you can fit a car in the driveway. So the area that it could still be set back 10 feet, but the area for the garage itself would still have to have an 18-foot driveway. And I don't believe that the lot width would allow that. But again, I'm going to ask the applicant to address the specifics of that, because again, that's not shown in the models that we have here.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Nyberg.
Thank you. Ms. Collins, I believe you said the plan was to dedicate or to deed the park space to the city, and the city, it would become city park. Can you tell me a little bit about the decision, about that decision, and why it's not being maintained by the HOA, or why the HOA doesn't retain ownership of that park area?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Nyberg, a couple of things. First of all, a planned residential development, a PRD, per ordinance does allow dedication of common open space. That's actually one of the criterias to look at a planned residential development. Also, and this is a little bit before my time, but in reviewing the documents and in conversations, there was a commitment that there would be a public park on this site, that it would not be walled in and used only by the neighborhood. And so in order to achieve that, there was a determination that the park would obviously be not fenced in, and it would turn into a public park because it's more for the entire neighborhood than just this community. So that was a determination made some time ago when they were looking at, when the city was looking at possible development for the site.
Any additional questions, commissioners? Okay, the chair has a question. I understood in your presentation that they want to have the park open so the neighborhood can use it, which that's nice, but there's zero provision for parking of any kind for the neighborhood, which
Correct.
means that unless someone is in immediate walking distance, this park has no utility. So can you put a little meat on the bones about how we got to that decision?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is classified as a neighborhood park, and neighborhood parks are generally about 10 acres in size, and they specifically do not have the kind of amenities that would draw from a larger area. They're intended to be used by people within a mile radius. And so it's a specific determination to not have parking so that it doesn't encourage people from outside the area. It's intended to be a neighborhood park only for neighbors. And so we have several parks in the city that are defined as that, and there is no parking. So it's intentional.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does. I mean, I don't think there's any, I'm sure the public knows pretty much how I feel about this whole project. It's just disappointing that there isn't a little high utility there. I mean, if you're walking over there in August from even a few blocks away, by the time you get back to your house, if you survive the walk in 115 heat, you're going to be like Night of the Living Dead. So I think what we're building here is basically a park that would have limited utility for a limited amount of people in a very limited geographic area. I don't know. It is what it is. So, okay, thank you for answering my question. I appreciate that. Commissioners, do we have any additional questions, comments? Okay, very good. Well, then at this point, we'll ask. Actually, it's not the applicant's representative because the city still owns the property and the city is the applicant. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. No, there is a purchase and sale agreement that specified that the city, who is, you're correct, the owner of the property, would process that portion, and then the purchaser, who is currently not the property owner, as you correctly stated, that they were the applicant for the platting processes. So,
Okay.
so the applicant actually is Homes by Town. They're represented by Hilgart Wilson. So, yes, we're the
Okay.
owner. They're the applicant.
Okay,
Or
good.
the
Just wanted to
city's
be
the owner,
clear.
they're the
Thank you.
applicant.
All right, very
Thank
good.
you.
With that, Mr. Hilgard, are you available? Like to make your presentation?
Thank you.
Good
Zach
evening.
Hilgart. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Zach Hilgart with Hilgart Wilson, 2141 East Highland. We don't have anything to add to the presentation from what Ms. Collins provided. We're here to answer questions. Myself, Rob Goopser, who is the planner through the entitlement process, as well as representatives from town development are here I'll make two comments in response to your questions. One is these lots are too narrow to provide for side entry garages. So there would not be side entry garage offered here. And the second, on the parking, 53rd Avenue is being widened, and 55th Avenue is already at the correct width, so they're 44 feet from back of curb to back of curb, which is enough room for on-street parking. I can't speak to the ordinance and what's allowed, but there is opportunity for parking on the street. So with that, we're available for any questions.
Commissioners, do we have questions for Mr. Hilgard? Hearing, seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in. Okay, with that, the chair will now open the public hearing portion of PP 20-04, Trevino preliminary plat. We do have 5 speaker cards. Chair will allow 5 minutes each speaker. I do have one card from a Mr. Zach Hillary, who does not wish to speak but says he is available to answer questions, and I guess that was you. So thank you. All right. With that, our first speaker this evening is Kathy Wheeler. Ms. Wheeler, we'll give you a minute to make way. And while we're waiting for Ms. Wheeler, the chair would like to correct the record. I spoke earlier that we had 3 public hearing items this evening. We actually have 4. So there'll be a little more excitement than you bargained for. Hi, Ms. Wheeler. Your name and address for the record, please.
Just toward me, thank you, appreciate that. Good evening, commissioners, City of Glendale staff. 453 homes total will be added to Glen Lakes communities during the next 2 years. Manistee Ranch HOA, the infill and the grading has just begun at the beautiful upscale Manistee Ranch HOA in the Glen Lakes area. 71 rental townhouses are planned. Olive Village rental homes, 208 are in the process of being built right now at 53rd Avenue and Olive by Walmart. The Trevino Glen Lake subdivision of 173 homes will begin in 6 months, around April of 2021. Imagine the impact this will have to the surrounding neighbors. 3 construction sites underway at the same time. Traffic, construction for the next 2 years. The neighbors will have to endure noise, delays, dust, heavy vehicle traffic, mess and disruption of their lives for at least 2 years. Do not forget about the children who have to walk to the elementary school, which is at 55th Avenue in Butler. Does the city have any concerns for the citizens who are in the middle of all this? Where is the city planning in all this mess? Councilman Clark, as you previously had said, development happens, get used to it. It does not mean development has to be high-density cookie-cutter homes or 208 built-for-rental homes that, Councilman Clark, you were not in favor of in the past few years. Perhaps you were afraid this was going to happen in your district, but it happened in ours. Preserve our parks and open spaces. We are seeking a referendum to bring the future of Glen Lakes course to the hands of Glendale voters. Preserve our parks and open spaces. Phone number 602-633-5525. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for coming in. Much appreciated. Mr. Matthew Sargent. Hi, Mr. Sargent. Welcome to the podium there. And if you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Matthew Sargent, 5043 North 85th Drive. I had a question about the public park aspect to the project. It's mentioned as a community park, but I saw no amenities for the community, aside from a sidewalk and a drainage area. We have a community park in our neighborhood, and it has basketball courts, baseball fields, covered kids' play area, and a tennis volleyball court. I don't see any features like that on that plan. I only see a walkway and a drainage area. Why is the city being stuck with the maintenance of basically open space that the developer needs to supply anyway?
I think that's a good question. Mr. Hori, could you address his concern about the apparent lack of amenity and the proposed park?
And Mr. Chairman, this is Lisa Collins. I might be best to address that because I think that the applicant is following what was the instruction by the city and the Parks Department, frankly. Again, this is not a community park. It's a neighborhood park, and they're generally about 10 acres in size, and they're specifically not amenities that would draw people. It's supposed to be a passive park. So there's a tot lot, there's a place for dogs and some picnic areas, but the city would not approve those type of amenities there because it is not what is allowed per the park's master plan in a neighborhood park. Again, this is not a community park, and what the gentleman's referring to is, I'm sure, accurate. When you have a community park, you have parking, you have basketball courts, you have all sorts of things that draw from a larger area, and that is not the intent of this park. It's not the correct size, and again, it's a neighborhood park. And if I need to provide a little more information on that, I'm happy to do that, but I hope that answers the question and provides a little more clarity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sargent. I appreciate your question. I hope that shed a little light on it, although I'm sure it's not the answer you're looking for. Bill Erickson. Hi, Mr. Erickson. Welcome back. Nice to see you.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. First of all, on behalf of the entire St. Glen Lakes group, myself, and a large majority of the citizens of the surrounding of Glen Lakes and other suburbs, a big thank you for rejecting the general plan and rezoning of golf course property. You did your duty to the citizens of Glendale and also your duty to the city of Glendale. Thank you again. Glen Lakes is owned by the city of Glendale. This includes every taxpayer or citizen, making the city officials responsible to keeping and maintaining this property as a recreation area for the citizens of Glendale. By rejecting the plan tonight, you will again be telling the city officials what the citizens want. Keep Glen Lakes. We do not want a housing development. The plan submitted by Townsend Homes was very well done with some exceptions. The proposal is not compatible with other existing developments in the area. Subdivision has 8 to 12,000 square foot lots, townhomes 4,000 plus. 2 houses per lot, not compatible. The planning, architect, landscaping, building materials are not compatible. Block constructed homes to wood and stucco, no comparison. Quality of living environment. Putting a high density development will create traffic problems morning, noon, and night, reduce a cooling effect on the open space and congestion, not a desired quality of life for the area. The style and quality of the homes will not be consistent and competent with the area. I'm sure that the projected plan would be greatly appreciated in another suburb, but not here. With the help of the city manager, Mr. Phelps, Mayor Weirs and company, you should have no problem locating a new city for your development. The citizens of Glendale want to keep our open space and recreational area, Glen Lakes Golf Course. We have a referendum against rezoning of Glen Lakes. And for the information, for signing our petition, you can take and see it at the Save Glen Lakes Facebook page. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in. Ms. Grazo. Good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you. Stella Griazzo, Ocotillo District. These are my opinions. Of course, town developers were drawn to the site and were excited about the opportunity to build in our established neighborhood. The developer makes it sound like a Norman Rockwell portrait, when in fact residents know it's not. With residents battling to keep the golf course for more than 2 years, the City Council sold the land this past December for $6.5 million. Isn't that putting the cart before the horse? The City Council could care less about the residents of Glendale. I wish the Planning Commission can override the City Council's decision because they are destroying our city parcel by parcel. I appreciate Councilmember Turner having the courage to speak his mind and present the facts. Councilmember Aldama, who I thought cared for the city and previously opposed the development, sat there quietly except for his vote to sell. Mr. Aldama has now lost my vote. Councilmember Tomachoff said she doesn't take any pleasure in casting her yes vote to approve the measure. Residents don't take pleasure knowing our concerns for the past 2 years fell on deaf ears. The council neglected the golf course, knowing full well they could then say it would cost too much to restore it. City Council knows they have the money to restore the course. And why would they sell the land but not the clubhouse? Will they approve another car wash, another drive-through where cars are lined up on the road blocking oncoming traffic, or better yet, a penny arcade that was once in downtown Glendale and not at all well received? In my opinion, Councilmember Clark has her own agenda and makes residents feel they are not entitled to voice their own opinion or concerns regarding their city. That was made clear when in past meetings she reprimanded residents for speaking up. Yes, Councilmember Clark, residents are passionate about their city. Past open house meetings regarding Glen Lakes golf course were poorly planned. I remember asking reps for the developers simple, basic questions that could not be answered. Those were warning signs right there. Of course, attendance at Glen Lakes golf course dropped. Look at what they did to our once beautiful course that so many people enjoyed. We all know golf is not going away anytime soon. Councilmember Clark, as you once said, development happens, get used to it. It doesn't mean you have to destroy our city while developing it. It doesn't mean development has to be high-density cookie-cutter homes or 208 built for rentals that she once was against, but now it's going up in our neighborhood, not hers. The streets are in bad need of repair, but continue to be neglected like everything else in Glendale. In the past 2 years, I would love to know what the traffic study came up with for the additional vehicles that will be on the road after developers come in and destroy our city. They always talk about traffic studies, but I don't believe the numbers. These studies cannot predict the number of vehicles that will be driven per household. As I said earlier, just my opinion, but Glendale City Council is more like a dictatorship. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Much appreciated. Bernadette Bogonini, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Hello. Welcome. If you could speak your name and address for the record, ma'am.
Bernadette Bolognini, 5815 West Morton Avenue, Ocotillo District. And I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I was listening to what everybody was saying. So first of all, I want to thank you, commissioners, for saying no to the development at the very beginning of this. That was such a very important part of the process and the procedures. So thank you again. And I'm hoping you will continue to support us. But anyway, we citizens are still concerned that the city bypassed us. They just weren't willing to listen to what we had to say. And again, the Planning Commission probably is the closest thing that we have to a referendum. Because you guys, you represent all of us and each district. So without a referendum, we were really depending on what you had to say. So what I want to say is, please preserve this green space. Thinking that we are going to destroy trees, mature trees, 2 lakes. And when the citizens put this in place in the 70s, they had a vision for our neighborhoods. They thought, hey, we should really provide a green space for the citizens going forward. And in that, not only is there green space, but when you think about all the wildlife that's in there, we have birds of all kinds. And just in general, the whole concept of destroying that type of an amenity is mind-boggling. So I want to say we need to keep it. And then the city keeps calling the trail around the development a park. It really isn't a park. It's just a sidewalk-sized trail. And it's sort of insulting to us to consider that a park. And in some respects, you also should consider this a historical spot. Something that in the 70s, the vision was to keep Glendale green, have a certain amount of breathable space for their citizens. And even though it's not 100 years old, it's close to 50, and for Glendale, I would consider that historical. So I'm hoping that you'll say yes to keeping it green and say no to the bulldozers. So thank you again, and I appreciate your time. And again, I want to say thank you to our commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you coming in. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak on this item? Do we have anyone else here that would like to speak on this item this evening? Hearing and seeing none, the chair will now close the public hearing on PP 20-04, Trevino preliminary plat. The chair will now ask for a motion prior to discussion. Is there a motion? Do we have a motion?
Chairman, I make a motion to deny, and I'd like to explain my reason why, if possible.
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
After listening to the residents several times, and there is a certain thing that keeps coming up, the cookie cutter houses, the park, the density. I still don't believe the density is what they're trying to sell. I've got the pictures in front of me, and I'm looking at them, and it is cookie cutter. They're all the same. They try to change it with different little features, but it's the same house over and over and over. And this does not conform with the existing neighborhood. The existing neighborhood is nowhere close to this. Each house is different in that neighborhood. I drove through it. So for that reason, I move to deny this motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilfong. Is there a second to the motion to deny?
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
Commissioner Nowakowski has seconded the motion to deny. Is there additional discussion? Commissioner Nyberg?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. There are a number of provisions with the question before us that I particularly don't care for. I don't like the situation with the park. My objection is that the city that takes ownership of the park. I don't particularly care for that. I think at times we, as a city, are challenged with maintaining the park space that we currently have. So I'm not necessarily in favor in adding acreage to what we currently have if we can't maintain that space. I don't like the density that's proposed. Earlier, it was mentioned about the side entry garage. Seems to me the simple remedy for that particular issue is to reduce the density. Problem solved. That being said, I think it meets the requirements in that the city established. So part of what I'm saying, I guess, is explaining my vote. I'm going to vote against the motion because I think it meets the requirements the city put forth, but I don't necessarily care for the project as it's proposed.
Commissioner Nowakowski?
Just thinking about what Commissioner Nyberg just said about the public park, and I call it public park. You can say it's not a community park, it's a neighborhood park. It's a public park, and I believe it will have no restrictions to outside visitors, no denying that. And the original reason for selling this space, the Glen Lakes Golf Course, was because it was a financial burden the city decided was not in their best interest to support anymore. So now, Commissioner Nyberg, to your point, we're spending money that we're not going to have any returns on. And so it's the same kind, but at a lesser amount. So I agree with you on that, and I understand why you're not in support. But also, something that Commissioner Wilfong said, a lot of public meetings, at least 6 public meetings. And from my point of view, consensus was never achieved with the neighborhood. I've sat here and I've heard dozens of residents from this neighborhood surrounding this development. And I can't recall one saying, I'm satisfied. The city has worked with us, the developer has worked with us, and we're satisfied with what you're doing. I believe that what I've heard is strong opposition, not consensus. So there's concerns with housing density and the overall design of this property. And what one of the residents just spoke is, there's no plan for the clubhouse area. We don't know what that's going to be. If that was part of this project, maybe it would have reduced the traffic on 55th and 53rd, but that was never really explained to me. But overall, did this infill project enhance the existing neighborhood? Does this engineering plan before us enhance this neighborhood? And that's why I am in support of Commissioner Wilfong's motion to deny this. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nowakowski. Commissioner Crowe.
Yeah, Commissioner Nyberg pretty much stated what I was going to say, the comments that I had. I don't like the density. I have questions about the park. I have questions about the traffic. I agree with Commissioner Nowakowski, but I also agree with Commissioner Nyberg that it meets the standard that has been set, even though we don't like it. And this is approval of a preliminary plat. So the real ability to stop this in its track, that ship has sailed. It has been approved by City Council, and this is simply an approval of a preliminary plat. Now, with that said, that doesn't change the density if we approve the preliminary plat, but going back to Commissioner Nyberg, it meets the requirements. So there's not anything we can do in that regard to stop it. So I'm unhappy about this. I don't like the way this was put together. I don't like the density, but on the other hand, it does meet all the requirements that the city laid out and that the council has passed.
Thank you, Commissioner Crowe. Well, boy, this is one of those times that I've never been more conflicted about a vote. I think everybody knows how the commission felt. We had a unanimous vote to deny the original application on the zoning. And regrettably, the City Council, at least in my view, regrettably, City Council chose to override our decision, and they approved the zoning. And this preliminary plat is an engineering document that, unfortunately, at this point, does in fact meet the standards required by the zoning. So I have to agree with Commissioner Nyberg and Commissioner Crowe in that sense. I'm sure that Homes by Town is a very, very fine company. And, obviously, they're a private business. They're motivated by profit. I don't fault them for that at all. I think we have to go back to the beginning and consider how this got negotiated and approved for sale before there was really a public dialogue. And I think that's really, really regrettable, and I hope that's something that won't be repeated, at least in the near term, with other pieces of property. There are hundreds of city properties that probably should be entertained for sale. It's just unfortunate the target got put on such a beautiful open space that brought so much joy to the residents that live in the vicinity. So I'm going to have to vote in opposition to the motion. As much as I regret having to do that, it just technically meets the requirements. I feel like we're sort of stuck on that. But, you know, I'd like the public and the city council to know how very much I deeply regret that there wasn't something better. We're a better community than this. I think there could have been a better use for this land, and at this point, it is what it is. So with that, the chair will now conduct a roll call vote, beginning on my far right. Commissioner Nyberg,
No.
Commissioner Crow,
Regrettably, nay.
Commissioner Wilfong,
I was missing what we're going to be voting on.
your motion to deny.
Oh, I approve it.
That was an aye.
Aye.
For the record.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And Commissioner Nowakowski.
Aye.
And with the deepest of regret, the chair votes nay. The motion is denied for denial of the application. So now we would need a motion for approval. And lacking that, it would go to council, I presume, with a non-recommendation. Is that correct, Mr. Gruber?
Chair, members of the commission, the city code doesn't contemplate a non-recommendation. That would probably be construed as a denial. I'm just speculating. So preferably a thumbs up or thumbs down recommendation would be good.
All right, commissioners, is there anyone willing to make a motion for approval of PP 20-04 Trevino preliminary plat?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nyberg,
I would move for approval of the preliminary plat with the stipulations that are included in the planning report.
thank you. We have a motion for approval of the preliminary plat PP 20-04. Is there a second? Commissioner Crow.
Mr. Chairman, I'll regrettably second it for the reasons that I've already stated.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of PP 20-04 preliminary plat for Trevino with two staff recommended stipulations. The chair will now conduct a roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nyberg.
if I may offer a comment before the vote.
Absolutely, please.
You know, I think the developer has had an opportunity to sit through all of the meetings that the rest of us have sat through. And I think if there's any interest in a show of good faith, I think the developer is the one that's in a position to take to heart some of these comments and to rethink the density and to rethink the city park and to rethink some of the other issues that the residents have talked about consistently, meeting after meeting after meeting. And Mr. Chairman, I completely agree with you that you know, it's a for-profit venture to develop this land, and it's all about pleasing the owners and the stakeholders and all of that. But there's also a point in time where you sit back and you work with people and you work with the community and you try to achieve consensus, and you simply do what is right. And maybe if you're sacrificing $1 or $2 along the way, at the end of the day, you've made the right decision. So, kind of my editorial comment, but I think the developer has the opportunity to take a step back, tap the brakes, and rethink things.
Thank you, Commissioner Nyberg. That brings to mind Commissioner Nowakowski's statement that no form of consensus, paraphrasing, with the neighborhood had been achieved, and I don't think it still has been achieved. We haven't had one single individual that lives anywhere near this property who has come forward and said, gee, this is great. Not one. Anyway, with that, any further comments, commissioners? Okay, try not to lose my place here. I think we're calling for a vote for approval of PP 20-04 with two stipulations. Beginning on my far right, Commissioner Nyberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Crowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilfong,
I just think the city could do better, and I think the developer can do better. Nay.
Commissioner Nowakowski. The chair regrettably votes aye. The motion has passed. Mr. Gruber, what are the next steps in the process?
Chair and members of the commission, your action with respect to case number PP 20-04 is final, subject to a written appeal received within 15 days.
Boy, this is one I really regret. Okay, we'll move on to our next public hearing item, Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3 Preliminary Plat, PP 20-06. Mr. Vigil, are you still with us?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, I am here.
Good evening. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Again, my name is Edward Vigil. I'm a planner with the City of Glendale. I am introducing the Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3 Preliminary Plat Application 20-02. Next slide. Thank you. Next slide. So for the Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3, the applicant is Jonathan Bastianelli of Taylor Morrison Homes, who I believe is in the audience today. The request is for preliminary plat approval for a 628 lot single family residential subdivision on approximately 383 acres. Next slide, please. So this is a vicinity map showing Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3 in relation to City Hall. As you can see, it's located a little south and to the west. Next slide, please. This is a zoning map showing Phases 2 and 3 in the yellow. The zoning is planned area development under the Stonehaven PAD, planned area development, that was approved a couple of years ago, back in 2017, I think. Next slide, please. So the preliminary plat here is showing you the Phase 2 and Phase 3 with the variety of parcels that are included in both Phase 2 and Phase 3. Next slide, please. Again, this is a depiction of the preliminary plat. This includes showing you that the total parcel amount and the total phases includes 1, 2, and 3. 1 has already been approved and is currently under construction. So this preliminary plat application is for Phase 2 and Phase 3. Next slide, please. So these are the development standards that have been approved with the PAD for Phases 2 and 3. They include lot sizes ranging from 4,000 square feet, 4,500 square feet, 5,000 square feet, 6,000 square feet, and 7,000 square feet. The maximum lot coverage on all of these lots has been approved at 55%. Next slide, please. So the citizen participation plan was implemented with zoning case 17-01. The property was recently posted on October 12, 2020. This was advertised in the paper on October 15th, 2020, and hearing notification cards were mailed out on October 16th, 2020. Next slide, please. So today, the recommendation is for the Planning Commission to approve the preliminary plat subject to the following 2 stipulations. Number 1, that the development shall be in substantial conformance with the development plan for Stonehaven dated December 2017. And 2, that the development shall be in conformance with the Stonehaven preliminary plat narrative submitted September 2020. So there is a typo here. It should say submitted September 2020. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vigil. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Any questions? Okay. Would the representative of the owner, Taylor Morrison Homes, like to make a presentation or add anything to staff's presentation? Good evening.
Jonathan Bassinelli with Taylor Morrison. I'll answer any questions if there's any questions from staff.
Sounds like we're good, commissioners. Okay, we do appreciate you coming in. Thank you. Okay, the chair will now open the public hearing on Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3 preliminary plat, PP 20-06. The chair has no speaker cards. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak on this item? I see a hand up next door. And if you'd like to come on over, I believe you are Matthew Sargent, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and Mr. Sargent, I'm going to ask you to fill out a separate speaker card. Come on in and say your.
It's just a quick question.
But I would like you to fill out a card for the record and give it to staff, if you would, before you depart.
Okay.
Thank you.
On phase 2, the portion that is near.
Oh, one more formality. I need to ask you to state your name and address for the record.
Matthew Sargent, Camelback Park, Yucca District, adjacent to the Stonehaven property.
Okay.
On the 83rd portion, adjacent to Bethany Home and 83rd, is that portion still intended as a gated community?
Mr. Vigil, did you hear that question?
Yes, I did. So parcels 9 and parcels 11 are still planned to be gated.
Okay, just, that was my only question.
Okay, that's it?
Thank you.
Okay, and if you don't mind, get us a card for the record. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item this evening? Anyone else? Hearing and seeing none, the chair will now close the public hearing on PP 20-06 Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3 preliminary plat. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Do we have a motion, commissioners? Commissioner Nyberg.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a question prior to a motion.
Sure.
Looking through some of the detail, there is a table that's on page 2 that talks about development standards, and it lists lot sizes ranging from 4,000 to 7,000 square feet. I believe that table was also part of the presentation a little earlier. But then looking at the lot detail, some of it's pretty small, but looking at the lot detail, I see that some of the lots are 70 by 120, which, if my math is correct, that gives me a square footage of 8,400 square feet. And so I was just a little bit confused by the table. So is the largest lot size 7,000 square feet, or would it be 8,400 square feet?
Can we go back to that development standard slide, please?
Yes, that's where it was.
So these lot sizes are the minimum lot size requirements. So there are some lots within certain zoning districts that are larger than the minimum requirement. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. That clarifies
You're
that for me.
Okay, any additional questions, commissioners? Okay, with that, then the chair will call for a motion. Do we have a motion, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve PP 20-06, subject to the stipulations contained in the staff report.
Support.
We have a motion and a second for approval of PP 20-06 Stonehaven Phases 2 and 3 preliminary plat, including the stipulation in the staff report. Any discussion? Okay, with that, the chair will conduct a roll call vote beginning on my far right. Commissioner Nyberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Crow,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilfong,
Aye.
Commissioner Nowakowski.
Claim my vote.
Absolutely.
Stonehaven was another parcel of property that where 1,000 Yucca District residents signed a petition and opposed. And over years and years came up with the consensus agreement, only to have that consensus agreement changed after 6 months of having it approved to a higher density lots. And, you know, in phase one of this, we had that argument. And for that reason, in support of those 1,000 Yucca District residents who are opposed to the higher density, I vote nay.
Okay, and the chair, kind of the same thing with regret. This is sort of a ministerial action. I vote for approval. So with that, the motion has passed. Mr. Gruber, what are the next steps in the process?
Chair, members of the commission, your action with respect to case number PP 20-06 is final, subject to a written appeal received within 15 days.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the third public hearing item of the evening, PP 20-05, Palermo Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Who is presenting? Mr. Virgil?
No, Mr. Chairman, Lisa Collins here. I'm going to present the case on behalf of George Gellert, who can't be with us this evening.
Okay, then the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks very much. So this is Palermo Preliminary Plat, PP 20-05. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So this, again, is a request for a, oops. Okay. This is a request for a preliminary plat approval for a 46 lot subdivision to be known as Palermo. The applicant is Taylor Earl of Earl and Curley, and the property size is 11.02 acres. Next. So this vicinity map shows the proximity of the subject property located at the southeast corner of 87th and Northern Avenues, west of City Hall. City Hall is shown in the red dot east of this area. Next. So here's the aerial showing the property in the dark hatched area. Next. So you did see this case before. It was rezoned to an R16 PRD, that's planned residential development. And it was approved on October 13th by the City Council, and the Planning Commission did hear that case and recommended in support. Next. So this is a site plan showing the site and the development standards that once again were approved by the City Council. Next. So this is the preliminary plat, and one of the things of note here is that you'll see at the entrance off of Northern, there's sort of a knuckle there, and That is the area where the subdivision will be gated. This does have some unique characteristics in that the streets on the northern end there are partially shown on the adjacent property. They're not actually, but the streets do have a combination of public and private areas. So there is a condition that requires this owner or subsequent homeowners association to maintain the streets. But this will be a gated subdivision. Next. So these are the planned residential development standards that were approved by the City Council, and they're required to adhere to those. Next. So again, the citizen participation plan was implemented with the zoning cases that we just discussed. This was advertised and the hearing notification cards were mailed October 16th, 2020. So the staff does recommend approval of the preliminary plat 20-05, subject to the following conditions. Substantial conformance to the stipulations. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say next. Next, I apologize. So staff recommends approval of PP 20-05, subject to the following stipulations. Substantial conformance to the stipulations of ZON 20-13 and the preliminary plat entitled Palermo, seal dated August 26, 2020, subject also to the revisions noted in the staff review. And with that, next, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions for Ms. Collins? Commissioner Nowakowski.
Ms. Collins, the site map that you presented or that you showed us, I recall from the last time we discussed this that there was going to be some changes to that in regards to a water and sewage easement at the southern portion of this property that was going to reduce some lot sizes. Am I correct? Was that approved, or did that happen?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Nowakowski, I do not recall that. I know the applicants here. There were some adjustments made based on the gating of the subdivision and some additional open space and amenities that were approved by the City Council, but that I do not recall.
Okay, I just remember having some discernment because we were making this developer do something that would benefit a future development next door. So we were putting more of a burden on this development. So I'll wait for the developer's rep to speak on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Okay, would the applicant's representative like to come forward, state your name for the record, and make your presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Rick Torres with the law firm of Earl & Curley on behalf of Taylor Earl, who's unfortunately at another hearing tonight. And I'm also here representing K. Halvanian Homes. I have a presentation ready to go, but let me just answer the question. Maybe I don't have to do the presentation unless you want it. The question that Councilmember Nowakowski asked was whether or not there was an easement that's being required. The easement is shown on the preliminary plats between lots 20 and 21. It runs in an east-west fashion and is really intended to provide future services to the subdivision or to the future development of the county island to the east.
All right, I don't think need a full presentation because we've heard it, but do you have a picture of what it would look like and
I do.
what adjustments to the other lot sizes?
Yeah, I do. Let me go through just one slide to kind of outline the 5 changes that were done since the last time that you saw this case. I think it's slide number 3, if you don't mind. Sorry, it's slide 5, I think. One more. One more after that one. There you go. So I'm going to go through the five circles there with the number 1 through 5. And I apologize, these are not correlated to the actual zoning stipulations that were approved by council. Stipulation number 1 talked about what Lisa referenced about the public and private entrance. Half of the street on 87th Avenue on the west side is currently dedicated to the city and is public right-of-way. If in order for us to do a gated subdivision, we had to have approval from the city to allow us to keep that public, and allow us to maintain that. So this builder or this future HOA will be responsible for the maintenance of both the public side as well as the private streets within the subdivision. Stipulation number 2, which what Lisa referenced, was that the council member wanted this to be a gated subdivision, and that indeed is the case here. Stipulation number 3 on this exhibit talks about the row of trees that we needed to install along the southern boundary. Stipulation number 4 on this exhibit talks to the lots south of Friar, which is just south of the easement that you were just referencing, Councilmember Nowakowski. Those 4 lots are required to have a minimum lot area of 6,500 square feet. And then stipulation number 5 is what we agreed to do, is to have a minimum of 5 benches and 5 shade trees dispersed throughout the community to allow passive and active areas in those 2 amenity areas throughout our subdivision. So I'm hoping that answers your questions.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions from Mr. Torres? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll save you from the full presentation.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you were Mr. Early, you had changed your look, so.
Well, I got a lot smaller and a lot fatter, so there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the chair will now open the public hearing on PP 20-05, Palermo Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak on this item? Anyone here like to speak on this item this evening? Hearing and seeing none, the chair will now close the public hearing on PP 20-05 Palermo Subdivision Preliminary Plat. Commissioners, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Nowakowski.
I motion to approve PP 20-05, subject to the following stipulation: substantial conformance to the stipulations of Zone CON 20-13 and the preliminary plat entitled Palermo, seal dated 10/23 of 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. For the record, that was Commissioner Crowe on the second. Okay. For approval of PP 20-05 with the staff recommended stipulations. The chair will now conduct a roll call vote beginning on my far right. Commissioner Nyberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Crowe.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilfong.
Aye.
Commissioner Nowakowski.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The motion has passed. Mr. Gruber, next step in the process.
Chair and members of the commission, your action with respect to case number PP 20-05 is final, subject to a written appeal received within 15 days.
Thank you. That takes us to our final public hearing item this evening, and that would be a general plan text amendment, GPA 20-03. And Ms. Collins making the presentation?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, this is a minor general plan text amendment, GPA 20-03. Next. So this is a request to allow major general plan amendments to be filed and considered by City Council in accordance with state law. This would allow requested amendments and City Council consideration at any time that meets the state law, I apologize. Next. So let's look at the state law. The state law states that at one time each year, a city may process major general plan amendments. and major general plan amendments must be considered by City Council in the same year they're requested. The Planning Commission must hold at least 2 public hearings in different locations, and there is a requirement for a 60-day legal advertising for the first planning prior to advertising for the first Planning Commission hearing, and letters are sent to agencies and surrounding communities for review and input. So that's all required to happen 60 days prior to the first Planning Commission hearing notification. Next. So let's look at the process and what it takes to really process a major general plan amendment. It takes approximately 105 days minimum required for reviews and advertising. So if we go through the numbers, there's a 60-day review period, like I just stated, that it's a letter that goes out allowing a review period of 60 days. After that, there's a 15-day advertisement for the Planning Commission first hearing, then a 15-day advertisement for the Planning Commission second hearing, and 15-day advertising for the City Council hearing. So that's how we get the total number of days that a minimum, again, that would be required to process a major general plan amendment. Next. So if we look at our current general plan, again, there's general plan text and general plan maps. There can be a minor amendment with both of those. So when we look at the text that guides and regulates major general plan amendments, we can see that it currently says applications will be accepted from March 1 to April 30. And the proposal is to change that by just taking those dates out and saying applications will be accepted and processed within the same calendar year. Again, that meets the state law, and it provides more flexibility. In a case where something was, submitted on April 31st, it would still be processed. And again, just keep in mind that there's going to obviously be a point where a major general plan amendment could not be submitted and still processed within the same year, because it's approximately a minimum of 105 days. So the second part of the minor text amendment would be the City Council public hearings to consider major map amendments will occur between October 1 and December 31st. So the recommendation here, or the proposal, is City Council public hearings to consider major map amendments will occur within the calendar year the application was submitted. Again, this is consistent with the way many other communities do this. And again, it does meet the state statute without putting some artificial deadlines that may tie the hands of the city and the Planning Commission if we chose to process a case at a different time. So I will say this, in acknowledging that there is only one hearing a year. If there was a situation where the city and the Planning Commission and City Council wanted to process a case at a time that was different than what is posted here, and again, it would fall in line with what's being proposed, then if something came along later that year, they would have to wait till next year. So in no case will we be having more than one City Council hearing to process major general plan amendments. Next. So hearing notices were mailed October 16th, and a notice of a public hearing in the Glendale Star was on October 15th. The hearing notices are mailed to interested parties. Again, this is something that involves the entire city, so there's no specific area, but it is mailed to interested parties that have submitted that with the city. Next. So the staff does recommend approval of GPA 20-03 minor text amendment with the following language changes, which I will read again. Applications will be accepted and processed within the same calendar year. And 2, city council public hearings to consider major map amendments will occur within the calendar year the application was submitted. Next. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. The chair has a question. We are in fact in compliance with state statute at the present time, are we not?
That's correct, we are.
Does the planning director see any particular advantage to these changes per se?
Mr. Chairman, I think that it allows the city flexibility, and I don't think it causes any harm to the process. I think it does allow things to move along in a way that, again, meets state statute, but doesn't cause any harm. All of these cases would be noticed just like any other case that's brought before the city, the planning commission and city council. So I see no harm in this, and I see advantages in that the city could take action if there was something that was very important to the community, and they were willing to have a submittal and have a decision heard before the end of the year. It's a risk that something else won't come in. And if something did, we'd have to move it to next year. But I don't think it certainly doesn't cause any harm. And so I think that the recommendation is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, any questions?
Chairman?
Commissioner Wilfong.
The way I see this is kind of like, you know, you have it at the beginning of the year, and I think it's kind of like this only benefits the city. It doesn't benefit the residents. And our past history kind of like, you know, really put that to light this last time, because if they had this access in 105 days, they could have got that pushed through in 105 days instead of going through the whole year and hearing what the residents were particularly involved with or what their concerns were. Now, what I'm going to go here is that even though this last incident happened or started in April, I didn't hear about it until June or July because I wasn't aware of what was going on, you know, with the public meetings. So to me, the 105 days is just a, you know, sneaky way of trying to get past residents without their input. And that's kind of like my thought.
Any additional?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Sure, of course.
Respond.
Thank you, Ms. Collins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Wilfong. I'm not sure that would happen. If we look at this and we see that if someone submitted an application April 30th, they could be heard October 1st. And I believe that's more like 90 days. So, you know, and that couldn't happen because with all of the noticing requirements, the way the ordinance, the way the general plan is written now does not provide more time than 105 days.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Crow.
that'd be 180 days. That's 6 months.
You're correct. And again, that would be if it was the last available time and then the first available time of the council. So I hear what you're saying, but it's, and again, 105 days is very aggressive. I think it would be hard to meet that. But you're correct, 105 versus 180.
Commissioners, any additional questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Crow.
I mean, I kind of see both sides of this. The one side is I understand what Director Collins is saying, that I could keep things moving or whatever, but on the other side of that, I don't see the harm in leaving it alone. I mean, I don't have a problem with changing it, but I'm not sure there's really that much of a reason to change it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Kind of struggling to understand the advantage to making these changes, to be quite frank about it. So, thinking about this, the suggested language says, during the month of January each year, the planning administrator shall publish date ranges.
Oh,
So the way I interpret that is that's not correct?
no, no, I apologize.
That's what was in my packet. So in my packet, I have a sentence that's struck through, and then I have a sentence that's in all caps.
Yeah. Mine's the same.
I apologize. That was earlier when we were suggesting a text modification, and I apologize. This is one of the issues that sometimes happens when we have remote hearings. And on top of that, I will say that the
Appreciate
staff
that.
is out of the office based on a quarantine. So my apologies. The recommendation does not state that. There is the planning director nor anyone else will establish date ranges. We thought about that again, and after the hearing where we discussed this with the Planning Commission, we determined that that really was not a good idea. I think that you all voiced that and we agreed. So we left it like the proposal here so that no one has to be looking around for when things have to be submitted. They just have to be accepted and processed within the same year. And so again, if we were in a situation where a project was submitted and it required a major general plan amendment, we could either, with this language, we could either move it along in the process or say, let's hang on to it and see if we get any more, and then process those at the same time. So it gives the city flexibility to either move something through or hang on to it and say, gosh, we might get another major general plan amendment. So we're going to hang on to this one. There's nothing pressing. We just know it has to be done within this same year and we'll hang on to it, but we wouldn't be precluded from actually accepting something. So again, my apologies for the error in what you have in your packet, but that is not correct. What you see on the screen is correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
do you have a slide that you could put back on the screen that shows us the proposed language?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Nyberg, that is the slide, the recommendation. That is the recommended language. Now we can go back to the one that shows how it fits into the entire, and that is slide number 65. If we can move back, yeah. So this is the slide that shows exactly what the language is now and what it would be, what the proposed change is. And so the recommendation changes 2 of the 6 bullet points. And again, states that applications, they just have to be accepted and processed within the same calendar year, which is again what state statute says, and again what many of our surrounding cities say. And again, I guess the advantage is if someone submitted something in February, we could accept it. And that doesn't mean we'd have to start the process right away. It just means that we could, hang on to it and say, gee, we might get another one in, because you can only have one council hearing. Once you do your major general plan amendments for the year, you're done for the year. You have to wait till the next year. So I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little bit convoluted, but there's so many things that sort of make the process move slowly, which is the intent. We have 2 planning commission hearings at least, And as you'll recall, with our major general plan amendment this year, you hosted 3 public hearings. So there's nothing saying that things have to move quickly. It just allows more flexibility to consider applications throughout the year. Does that make sense?
Director Collins, if I may, if you
Yes.
had applicant A, major plan amendment, brought in by somebody in, let's say, January, and you
Okay.
accept the application, but you don't process it in discussion with the applicant, and then in March or April or May, you get someone else that comes along and has another major plan amendment, then you decide it's time to start processing. Okay, that gives you the 105 or 115 days, whatever it was. And the city council can only have one meeting per year to consider major plan amendments, but they could consider multiple plan amendments during that meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and that's the whole point of the
Okay, I
state
just wanted to be
state law,
clear.
that, in fact, major general plan amendments should have an impact on the entire community, not just the area. So you wouldn't want to process multiple ones throughout the year, because a major general plan amendment has a major impact on your general plan. So you would want to see all of those together to determine, not that you have to vote yes on all of them or no on all of them, but it gives you a comprehensive view of what those amendments would do to the entire community. So you're correct. Yes, you'd have multiple, and that's the intent of the legislation.
Okay, so in the event there were multiple applications, they could be processed at the timing discretion of the planning department, knowing that they take whatever it is, 105 or 115 days apiece, and then bundled, for example, for that one and only one council meeting at some point during the year, and then you're done for the year.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. I would just add that I don't really see a time when, and not that it couldn't happen, that we would say, oh, there's 105 days. It depends on when planning commission.
That would be the
hearing dates
minimum.
are, council hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
calendar day
it's a minimum, and I
is the
would
minimum.
expect
Yeah.
it would
Okay.
most likely be longer than that.
Well, as far in my memory, at least during my time on the Planning Commission, I can only think of one major plan amendment. Unfortunately, it was an ugly one, but I can only think of one. So it's not something that happens with great frequency. So I think, commissioners, we can probably consider that this isn't something that we have to address with some great regularity. Maybe there's something brewing out there we're not aware of that necessitates this. But I guess what I'm saying is, in my mind, perhaps there are some advantages to the proposed change, but since there isn't a high volume of these types of applications being considered, leaving things alone maybe causes no particular harm. I don't know. How do you all see it?
Chairman, I hear what you're saying about the current situation with the last major amendment. Now, if we had the plan that she's recommending, the 105 days, we would have a whole different situation, a different outcome probably without any kind of resident input. Unfortunately, the resident input wasn't listened to this time, but you can see what I'm saying. Instead of having the 6 months there that it's available.
Right, the potential is there to more fast track it.
Yeah, and fast track it and get it past the residents. I just don't like that. I think you need to have the whole year time that it's laid out right now in case of issues like this happening again.
Okay, any other, Commissioner Nyberg?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. I am struggling to see that the current language has caused us problems or stifled progress in the past. I think the current language is very clear. I mean, I think when people go to the general plan, they read the procedure, it's spelled out very clearly that the application period is from X to Y. The council will act within a certain period of time. It's very clear. The other thing that I think about is 4 members of this body sat on the general plan steering committee. And I don't specifically remember why we came up with the language that is currently in the general plan. But one of the concerns I have is with the general plan is we develop that language and we put it before the voters. And we ask the voters to pass judgment on the document. They approved the document and it's what we have. I'm very reluctant after voters weigh in to go back and change the process. I think it sets a bad precedent. I think it leaves a bad taste in the public's mouth. When I think about this kind of stuff, I personally think about a temporary sales tax that I supported that has since become permanent as a council decision. And I regret ever supporting it as a temporary measure because it has now become permanent and I was never given an opportunity to weigh in on that. So it's that kind of stuff. But the proposed language is not bad, but in my mind, it's a solution looking in search of a problem. We don't have a problem now. The language that we have works fine, and to your point, the only time we've had to use the revision process was just recently. So I don't think the change is necessary.
Well, let me, Commissioner Nowakowski.
Hi, Lisa. I'm a little lost in the neighborhood involvement process in this. Can you walk me through the timeline of when a major plan amendment is asked of the city, when the city would hear it, and the neighborhood involvement and our involvement as our 2 meetings? Can you walk me through the timeline with how it is now and how it would be, so I have a better understanding of how that would impact neighborhood involvement?
Sure, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Nowakowski. So when a submittal is made, there is a 60-day review period that is required by the neighboring communities and agencies. And then from that point on, it really is processed like a traditional zoning case or minor general plan amendment. And again, we have minor amendments to the general plan frequently, and those are processed through the Planning Commission and the City Council. So while it is a voter-approved document, there are only certain aspects that really trigger a change. And again, there's major and minor amendments. And so again, this is
I'm sorry to
being
interrupt. What I was looking
classified as a. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for interrupting. What I was looking for
No, that's okay.
are dates, like the month. If it's submitted in October, then before New Year's, January, we have to have 2 commission meetings. Am I right or wrong or misunderstanding?
Well,
within
yeah,
60-day review period. Or
Mr.
is that
Chairman and
staff?
Commissioner Nowakowski, well, that couldn't happen because you'd be going into the next year. So probably the latest something could be submitted would be July or August. At that point, there would be a 60-day review period. And then after that time passes, then there is the notice of the first Planning Commission hearing. So that's 75 days. And the Planning Commission hearing is noticed, based on the property location, a 300-foot notice and to all interested parties. So the legislation, the state law, in essence, is requiring 2 planning commission hearings because it's a major general plan amendment. And so there would be, you know, a minimum 15-day advertising. Then the planning commission would hold a hearing, and then another advertising, and the planning commission would hold another hearing. And the way that the planning commission can decide to hold, you know, 2 hearings a month or have 1 each month like you traditionally do. So that's why I'm saying this is kind of fluid, but it makes it so there's just a minimum of 105 days. I again would doubt that one could get processed that quickly, but you could never have a case where someone's submitting something in October because they wouldn't be able to be processed within the same year. And that's another point of this too, so that you don't submit something really early and then people sort of lose interest. I mean, it's a little bit to keep things on target so that you can't just continue things until people just forget about it. It's so the state legislation really is in place to ensure that there's good notification and that people have an opportunity to review things and that they don't sort of lose track because it takes too long. So that's the intent. And I'm sorry, I can't really give you dates because it depends on when hearings are scheduled, because, you know, we, under normal circumstances, wouldn't just schedule a special meeting. I know you guys have even, that's been bounced around, not that you wanted to do that, but that you think it's important to stick to the calendar and not have special meetings because, you know, it changes the process and adds a level of confusion. So, you know, I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Didn't we have a slide showing the timelines tonight?
Yeah, we can go back to that.
Yep, we pull that up again, sure.
It just shows the slide 64. Yeah, okay.
There.
So this is the approximate 105 minimum days. This is how we get to that number. So if someone submits, then there's a 60-day review period, and nothing can happen during that time. We can't start advertising for the commission hearing. We can't do anything. It's just out there for review. And then there's the 15-day advertisement. You know, and again, that's a tight timeline, but that's what's required. It usually takes longer than 15 days to get something advertised, but you have to wait until the 60 days. You can't jump the gun and get going faster than that. So there's that advertisement, and there's the planning commission hearing. Then there's another planning commission hearing. And at that hearing, you can vote or you can have another. The state law says, our general plan says 2 hearings. The state law says a minimum of 2. So actually, you know, we probably should be, we have the ability to have more than 2 because the state law says you can, even though our general plan says 2. And then there's another 15 days for the city council advertisement. Again, that would mean that all those hearings would have to fall on those specific dates, which is highly unlikely, but it can't be any less than that. So that's the way the process lays out.
Commissioner Nowakowski.
I get it. I usually, when I plan, I work backwards to when the council meeting happens, work backwards to where the 2 planning commission meetings are. And I think the target dates of planning commission for residents and everyone else would be August, September timeframe, and council being November or December. And during this process we went through right now, I thought it was one improvement we can make as a city is having a remote site hearing, one of the planning commission's meetings to be remote site near the area that's being targeted, because it was really unfortunate that residents of the Glen Lakes area had to travel to Gripstick for a meeting. So I thought if we were in their neighborhood, that would have been a lot better. And then also, we can sponsor an open house prior to that, and then have the planning commission meetings. But that would be my recommendation, is have one planning commission be a remote site hearing. And then, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize if I interrupted, and Commissioner Nowakowski, that's precisely what the state law anticipates and requires. So we have hearings at the council chambers or wherever you guys hold your hearings. And then it's required to have a remote hearing because the major general plan amendment is anticipated to affect the entire community. So it really needs to be in a remote location that affords the opportunity for the entire city, the entire community to be there. It's not just for the neighbors in that area because again, it's a major general plan amendment. And so the impact is to the entire city. So we should have remote hearings in a completely different location so that other people can attend. And again, this was, you know, sort of a unique situation, but again, you could have multiple major general plan amendments at the same hearing, which is what the state legislation anticipates. And so you want to have them in different areas.
Thank you for explaining.
Well, and I think this summer, our meeting locations were complicated by the COVID restrictions. So as I remember, that's how we ended out there, other than some other venues. So, well, let me step back for just a moment, if I may, and I'll open the public hearing portion for General Plan Text Amendment GPA 20-03. And I have no speaker cards. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak on this item? I see a gentleman who'd like to speak, Mr. Matthew Sargent. And again, Mr. Sargent, I'm going to ask you to state your name and address for the record, and please provide staff with a yellow card on this particular item. Yes, sir.
Okay. It seems that this project, or this proposal is basically to do with major general plan amendments, which would be like rezoning a housing area for a high-rise hotel. Now, do you want to limit yourself to a 60-day review period and whatever it falls in that year to have an answer back to the developer? Because the way the wording in it, that part that she presented, it said within the same calendar year. Not within 365 days of the application, but within the same calendar year.
Well, that's required by state statute, so that's out of our control.
A 60-day review period?
Yeah, the within the calendar year and so forth is required by state law, so.
But you have no.
We have no flexibility on that issue.
If you're taking out the end date of accepting applications, then you have no way to make sure you can get it within that same calendar year.
It would have to, if the application came in late in the year as we were discussing, it would have to be moved to the next calendar year.
The next calendar year?
Yes, sir.
For the next process?
Yep.
But there's nothing in there. Once you remove all those items from the agenda, then there's nothing stating that it needs to go into the next calendar year. You may need to add that.
Well, that would have to be what happens to comply with state statute. Yeah, that's beyond our control.
But what I'm saying is, you're taking out when it needs to be applied to, but you're not putting in what's the drop dead date for applications for this calendar year.
Well, the state statute dictates that, so.
105 days is what we're going to do?
That would be the absolute minimum as a practical matter.
Right, but how are they going to review or make changes to the plan?
That's what the 60-day period is for.
No, I mean the developer. How are they going to make changes to the plan? They have comments.
They file
15
their
days,
app.
15 days, 15 days. There's no time for the plans to be updated and resubmitted.
Well, that's what the 60-day period is for. And we're not talking about plans for a specific property or development. We're talking about major plan
Rezoning.
amendments.
Right,
No,
which
major.
may include up to 3 cities if you're in a parcel of land that's, you know, on the edge of the city.
But we only have jurisdiction within the city of Glendale.
Right, but your major plan has been submitted to the other cities.
Right.
It's a standing document, you know, the general
Right.
plan of the city. Well, anyway, that was my comment to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item this evening? Anyone else? Hearing, seeing none, the chair will now close the public hearing on General Plan Text Amendment GPA 20-03. Do we have a motion prior to further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nyberg.
I would move that we deny General Plan Text Amendment GPA 20-03.
We have a notion for denial of GPA 20-03. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Commissioner Wilfonks. We have a motion for denial of General Plan Text Amendment GPA 20-03 and a second. Discussion. Commissioner Crow.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The problem I have with it is that it was voted on by the public, and the language that we have now is what the public wanted and what they approved. The second thing is, as you pointed out, we've only had this one time, so I'm not sure why we're trying to fix something where we don't have a problem. I don't see the need for this. I guess am I lost here or what? I don't, why do we need this?
Commissioners, any further question, comment? Well, I do remember amazingly, some discussion from serving on the General Plan Committee. And I think part of it that kind of stuck with me is that with a date certain process, unlike other communities, and they can do things differently. Sometimes we do things better, sometimes we don't. But I seem to remember the theming among committee members was that when you had an application period with dates certain, it was very clear to everyone what they needed to do to have their application ready and their case ready. And, I'm looking at the dates, and, if you came in with an application in September, it's not going to get processed. There's not enough time with 105 days. We'll never hit 105 days. That, as a practical matter, that would really be fast track, and I suppose it's possible, but not likely it could be processed. So that means if you brought an application in on the very last day under the current plan, April 30th, you have a 60-day waiting period. That takes you to June 30th. Then you start the 3 meetings with 15-day notifications. That takes you into mid-August. Well, council is not in session in mid-August, which means as soon as they're going to vote is September. I'm not sure changing this really moves it up any. I mean, I'm not seeing the advantage, and I agree with Commissioner Crow that and Commissioner Nyberg that both remarked about voter approved, You know, that really ought to carry some weight. And the sales tax, the temporary sales tax that many of us bought in to save the city when they were really in dire straits, with the promise that that was going to go away. And here we are, not 5 years later, but more like 10 years later, and it's become permanent. And we didn't get a chance to take another look at it. So I'm with you on being wary of changing things that are voter approved. I think that should carry weight.
Well, plus, Mr. Chairman, this gives you very specific guidelines to perform to. And
And it
it
seemed to
gives you the ability to say, okay, if I know how to do this, I have to be within these guidelines. And there's something to be said about specific guidelines and not just being open-ended.
I have
And
to agree.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to apologize. I somehow lost the connection. So I am here by phone and I'm trying to get back connected, but
Well, you may be glad you missed that part of the discussion.
Oh, heavens, no, I want to hear
No, we're
everything,
just
but-
discussing the relative merits, but thank you for
Yeah,
phoning
no,
back in.
and I understand, yeah.
Well, with that, is there any further discussion? Okay, then the chair, we have a motion to deny general plan text amendment GPA 20-03 and a second. The chair will now conduct a roll call vote, beginning on my far right with Commissioner Nyberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Crow.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilfong.
Aye.
Commissioner Nowakowski.
Ain't broke, let's not fix it. Aye.
And that's an aye, and the chair votes aye. So the motion to deny is approved. Mr. Gruber, would there be another step in this process?
Yes, Chair, members of the commission, your recommendation with respect to case number GPA 20-03 be forwarded to the City Council for further consideration.
Okay, well, we'll hope in their infinite wisdom that they will support us on this. That is our last public hearing item for this evening. So, Ms. Collins, do we have other business?
No, Mr. Chairman, we do not. Thank you.
Do we have a planning staff report?
Not this evening, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner comments, suggestions? Commissioner Nowakowski?
Recalling the Palermo discussion in that infill project where it was R16, I remember from the original meeting, we had on that saying that we don't have an R15. And it seems like everything that's coming up is high density and increasing the number of lots. And am I correct, we don't have an R15?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Nowakowski, when a PAD is established, there's no real underlying zoning classification. So while someone might call it R15, they're just trying to represent a lot size. So so the case you just brought up, the Palermo, that was an R16 PRD because that's an overlay. It's something that modifies development standards for a particular single-family residential district. When you have a situation like a PAD, there's no specific, and I know this is a little bit confusing, but a PAD is not an overlay. A PAD establishes and creates its own zoning classification. So while the code may not have a specific R15 in it, nothing is going to be able to be rezoned to R15 for that reason. If someone wanted standards like that, they would process a PAD, a planned area development. I hope that answers your question. I'm happy to talk about that more if you would like to discuss it further later.
Let's discuss later.
Okay, any additional comments? Clay?
Yeah, Chairman, I just want to say thanks for everybody's appreciation on my last couple of absences. I really appreciate that.
Well, we're happy when you're here, Commissioner Wilfong, very much so. With that, I would just remind folks in our huge televised audience out there to please keep your pets hydrated, and even though the weather's transitioning, why please make sure they have some shade. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.